I'm gonna have to look for childhood favorite stories in order to read. I've been thinking about doing something, but I don't know if I'd put it with bad fanfiction theater or I love fanfiction, or if it should be its own thing. I was thinking about, assuming I could find them, looking at fanfictions I thought was awesome 10 years ago, and then just that I haven't read in forever, and then just reading through them and see if they're as good and awesome as I remember them being.
That might be a good idea. I think that would be really neat, actually, to.
Because I recently found Unfulfilled Vow, and I was like, oh, I love that fanfic when I first read it, because the way Unfulfilled Vow worked was it was a Yu-Gi-Oh story, and I remember, like 10 years ago trying to find something to read on fanfiction.net, and when I would look for my interest, the stuff I like to read. I don't know why I can't form words,
It's
but
all right.
I can't.
It's because we're
And
recording. Every time,
probably.
every time that happens, our words leave us.
And like Unfulfilled Vow would keep popping up, and I'd see it, and I'm like, man, I don't want to read that. That's probably really stupid, and not very well written. I'm like, I don't want to read that, and and I would come upon it every now and then. I'm like, man, I really don't want to read that. That's stupid. And then finally it showed up, and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna read this story because it keeps popping up, and I just go ahead and read it and get it out of the way, and I'll be as stupid as I assume it is, and I'll be done with it. And I actually really liked it, and it was like 20 something chapters or more. And then mom even read it, and then we were both were waiting on updates for it, and then it finally finished. Um, and and of course I was just recently looking around online, and I found it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that story. It's still as good as I thought it was. And I was just thinking, well, maybe I should try to do a video on that. I just don't know if I did do it, like, where would I put it? Because I'm like, most of the stuff I probably liked back then belongs in bad fanfiction theater, whereas some stuff might still belong in I love fanfiction.
Well, you could always do the episode and then classify it later.
True. But I also thought, I'm like, well, maybe I could break the mold from time to time for I love fanfiction and just be like, we're going to do one from back in the day and see if I still like it.
One from the vaults.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I read this like 10 years ago and I liked it then. Let's see if I like it now. Because now I'm educated in writing, and of course my tastes have matured. And I know a lot more than I did back then. So how plausible is this?
It's funny too, because sometimes you go back and look at stuff and stuff you liked or even could tolerate then.
Uh,
By now, it's like there are so many things that are just instant no for me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
will I will see it and I'll be like, I'm not putting up with this. This is crap. Get out of my sight. But back then, I wasn't quite like that, so I could get through it. Like I've tried to read now there are some of these series that I've tried to read that turned out to be so good still, and or even better. Like some of them
Hmm.
are even better as an adult
Yeah.
and years on. And sometimes there are jokes that you get more as like Pee-wee's Playhouse. This I know this isn't fan fiction, but I was
It's
rewatching Pee-wee.
okay. It's okay. I used to watch Pee Wee's Playhouse as a little girl, but I don't really remember anything about it.
I did too, and it was so weird to revisit that because it was on for like 5 years, so it was a really yeah it encompassed several years of my life and several pretty eventful years. So it took me back in that sense. But there were a lot of things in it that made me melancholy and remember. But there were also a lot of things that made me go, that's a lot funnier as an adult than it was as a kid. but there are some things like I tried to reread the new Teen Titans series
Mm.
from the 80s, and it was just like, oh my God, get over yourselves. It was I used to really like that. I had the whole series to a point. And when I went back and tried to reread it a few years ago, I was like, God, what is this drivel? How did I put up with it? I don't, much less like it. I don't know.
I was this is another a thing with Mom. I had recently got Mighty Max and Pirates of the Dark Water
Mhm.
on DVD. And I'm like, it's been forever and a day since I've seen anything to do with Mighty Max. And I know Mom's in there watching TV, but if she doesn't mind, I think I'd like to sit down and, just watch a whole bunch of Mighty Max episodes, because I really loved Mighty Max. And I also had my favorite episodes and all that. And I'm like, I asked her, and she's like, yeah, I'm not watching anything important. I'm like, you want to stay here and watch it with me? And she's like, I don't have anything to read, so I'll just sit here. And I'm like, okay. Now, I'm like, Mom, now it is, stuff from my childhood, stuff we've seen before, but I haven't seen it in, like, years. And she's like, I don't care, I'll just sit here and watch it with you. And I'm like, okay. So I put Mighty Max on, and I'm watching the first episode, and I'm like, yeah, this is really good, and I'm getting into it. And then Max says a joke, and I'm like, that's really not funny. That's really not funny. And then the story would keep going and keep going, and things would be good, and then Max would make another joke, and I'm like, that really takes me out of the story. I'm like, this is good. Otherwise, what? And I'm like, when I was a little kid, I remember laughing at these jokes, and after a while, I think we got to the werewolf episode or something, and I looked at Mom, and I'm like, Mom? She's like, yeah. I'm like, the jokes Max makes, they're not really all that funny. She's like, no, they're not really. And I'm like, I laughed at these when I was a little kid. She's like, yeah, you did. And I'm like, Mom, I'm going to tell you something I never really told anybody. And I'm starting to think that this is how it is with stuff like this, which holds true now if I reinvest in something that I liked as a child but don't care much for now. And I'm especially noticing it now since they're showing reruns of Carmen Sandiego on TV. And when I was a little kid, I didn't know why I didn't understand the references Max was making. And so I just laughed because, hey, it's a kid like me being a smart aleck to some douchebag, like Skullmaster or somebody, like some serious evil, and he's just like, fuck you guys, except he wouldn't say that. He's supposed to be kind of like Spider-Man and just making jokes. Yes, 11-year-old boy in the 90s on TV going, fuck you guys, and flipping Skullmaster off.
I know, I want to see this now. You could have redone Mighty Max. Fuck you guys. What?
Fuck you guys, I'm going home.
Oh, I'm gonna wipe my eyes. I literally haven't seen Mighty Max since the 90s, and just thinking back about.
Well, we should marathon that one day and like do a commentary on it while we watch, because it's just like 26 episodes, and it was like 2 13-episode seasons, I believe. But anyway, and I'm like, Mom, I didn't understand what was supposed to be funny about the stuff Max was saying, but I just laughed because I knew I was supposed to. And I'm like, and of course now as an adult, I do kind of get them, or they're so dated that I just don't get them. But I'm like, that's really not funny, and that really takes away from the otherwise good story. But so then I had Pirates of Darkwater, but I put off watching that because I'm like, well, it'll probably be a lot like watching Mighty Max. There's good things about it, but then there's stuff that just going to completely remove me from enjoying what it is I'm enjoying. And I think I don't remember if Mom was in the hospital or if it was after she died. But I finally sat down and I watched a whole bunch of episodes of Pirates of Dark Water. And honestly, I pretty much forgot I was watching a cartoon or something like that because it was just that good to me. And I'm like, this is really good. You know, it's like that one time where Kelvin was laying on the couch and I was just sitting in the chair and I found Friday the 13th on TV. And I think it was in the middle of the movie, but I'm like, whatever, and I started watching it, and Kelvin, he's, just laying on the couch watching it. And we were just sitting there and we watched the whole thing, and I was kind of thinking it to myself, but I'm like, this is a really good movie. This really holds up, even like 20 years, 10, however, whenever it was, later. And I was just kind of thinking that to myself while I was watching the credits, and then Kelvin's like, even all these years later, that was a really good movie. It's still a really good movie. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it really is. The first Friday the 13th holds up very well. It's it's still got some of the fundamental weak spots of what would become its genre, but I mean, that always happens when something is right there at the beginning. Because, like, Halloween, for example, the classic slasher film that started the big rush of slasher films in the 80s, you can look at it and it is very different too in its own way, but it's also very much a trendsetter. And Friday the 13th kind of upped the ante a little bit and did its own thing very well. I thought it was very strong. But even going back and watching it, I feel like it has aged extremely well. Like, it's still a compelling story. And the great thing about it is that by isolating them, on like a lake and having them be at a camp that's being rebuilt, makes it much easier to believe in the setting because it's not quite so dated. Because their hairstyles and clothing styles are kind of a little bit dated, but like the setting.
But I mean, it's still a good story itself.
Yeah, I mean, you can believe in it because it's still a very compelling story and really very well acted, and the setting doesn't immediately take you out of the suspension of disbelief because it's almost like a microcosmos in itself.
But I was just thinking that was interesting how, how I could look back on my nostalgic feelings as a kid with a show versus how I can see it now as a show. And I'm like, Pirates of Dark Water was really good. Mighty Max I really liked, except that I'm like, the jokes, they really aren't funny. And they really don't belong here on a show that's trying to be more serious than the time calls for. I mean, they still got some kind of cheesiness to it in places, but I'm like, you could rework this and, like, reboot it and it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, you'd still have to get Tim Curry to be Skullmaster because I could not see any other voice coming out of that mouth, but...
Yeah, Tim Curry's got to be... No one can really ever replace Tim Curry in anything.
No.
Once you've had Tim Curry, you just can't.
He's like the awesome voice of villains everywhere. I don't know what it is about Tim Curry's voice, but it's amazing.
It really is. He has an amazing voice. He has such a rich, melodious voice.
It's perfect for villains. Like, I never even... Well, of course, I didn't really know as a kid, but... it wasn't until much later that I find out he was the voice of Skullmaster, and I'm like, really? He sounds awesome! He's also the guy who plays the clown in It. Really awesome! Like, I keep finding out all these things, and I'm like, really awesome!
Yeah, I mean, he has just an amazing repertoire. He's been so many amazing roles, and he has just defined them so well for himself.
He was even in Pirates of Darkwater. I'm like, he was. He's that short dude with the peg leg, Kronk. I'm like, really? I didn't even notice that was Tim Curry. I told Kelvin that, and he's like, wait, that's supposed to be Tim Curry? I'm like, yeah, that's Tim Curry.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me to see him in all these different roles, because even when he's just being, a villain of some kind, he's never the same villain twice.
Yeah.
Like, whenever he's a character, he's never the same character twice. He's just such an amazingly flexible actor that he can bring life to a character without necessarily being trapped as that character and cast forever as that character. Like, he was so iconic as Frankenfurter to me in Rocky Horror, but he was also great as Pennywise in It.
Yeah.
And, he was also in Ferngully and in My Little Pony and The Worst Witch and all these other shows.
Yeah.
And I don't think of him as any one specific role. I think of him as Tim Curry being just all these amazing characters. He's really impressive to me.
I was talking to Kelvin about, like, I wonder what a live action Mighty Max would be like. Cause I was like, I could think of maybe like a wrestler or somebody being Norman. I'd probably up the age of Max and make him a little older, so it's a little more believable that he's actually doing all this crap. I don't know about Virgil, because that would have to be a puppet or something in order to make Virgil look like Virgil. And then I was thinking, well, what would we do with Skullmaster? Because you could maybe get Tim Curry to be the voice of Skullmaster. I don't think he's going to look 12 feet tall, imposing huge white dude with a purple cloak and kilt, with a sword that would make, normal swords look like butter knives. I'm like, you would have to get somebody. I'm like, if you did a live action version, you probably couldn't get Tim Curry to do the voice, because it'd have to be the actor that played Skullmaster unless you wanted to CG him or something.
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the actor who does the voice. There are actually some. Actually, for a while, there have been plenty of live action films where they dub over the actor. There are actors that even specialize in matching up what they say to the actor's lip movements, whether in, and of course, obviously they do it for foreign language films as well, but there are and it was more, widespread. It's not quite done so much in now, especially in like English language stuff, but there are still countries where they tend to do that, actually.
And then you have to find somebody for Warmonger. Man, a Mighty Max movie would be awesome if you could get the right people to do it. But that's something they'd probably just throw to Michael Bay and be like, explosions, boobies, and aliens.
Yeah, flashy camera angles, Megan Fox's tits.
Yep. Pirates of Darkwater movie would be cool, too.
Yeah, although they'd fuck that up, too. I mean,
yeah,
we can't have a decent film with a non-Caucasian protagonist.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I know they would find a way to totally cock it up, because, and I'm not one of these people that, trolls Tumblr and bitches about everything in that category, but
yeah.
But seriously, they have fucked up so many films like that, and it's just like, Pirates of Darkwater was so noteworthy and amazing for matter-of-factly having such a diverse cast of characters. There is no way Hollywood would keep that. There is no way.